Hello and welcome to the 9th edition of Power Dynamics for Life. I'm Dr. Aisha Haynes-Belizaire and today's topic is erasing women. Don't let extremism silence us. Now, gender power dynamics has always favored men, and even though women are slightly a little bit over 50% of the population, we are treated like a minority. And the reason for that is because we are the bearer of children and the primary caretaker. The late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that the decision for whether or not a woman is going to have children is central to every woman's life. And I would also add to that it also determines whether or not how you pursue education, how you pursue your career, and also how much political power you will have. And so when we look at the gender power dynamics, we have to look at the extremism. And extremism is on both sides of the aisle, both political parties. On the Democratic side, we are looking at neutralization, and on the Republican side, we are looking at marginalization. So let's talk about marginalization. Marginalization means that you are outside of the mainstream, that your issues are not in center focus. So when you think of marginalization, I want you to think of like a piece of notebook paper. And a piece of notebook paper will have lines going up and down, blue lines, and on the outside there are red lines. And then outside of that are the margins, and inside of the red lines is the central part of the text. And so when your issues are outside of the margins, your issues are not considered, and you are considered insufficient, insignificant. In terms of on the Republican side, once Roe versus Wade was overturned, many Republican-led states rushed to pass extreme abortion bans that did not even consider rape, incest, and a lot of times not even the life of the mother. And when they do consider the life of the mother, that it's very unclear. And so that leaves a lot of doctors in a space that when a woman's life is being threatened while she is pregnant, they don't know at what extent they are to go in and save her life because of fear of prison or losing their medical license. There have been instances where women have had ectopic pregnancies, and this is a pregnancy where the embryo is embedded in your fallopian tubes, and that is not a viable pregnancy ever. And so that means that it has to be taken care of. But because these laws are so ambiguous, there have been instances where women have been life-flighted to other states where abortion is still legal. And so a woman not being able to even know that her life will be saved if she gets pregnant, you would think that automatically that birth control will become more widely available and more accessible. But about a month and a half ago, the House of Representatives in Congress voted to make sure that there was a federal right to birth control. The reason for this is because when Roe versus Wade was overturned, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas said that we needed to revisit Griswold versus Connecticut. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but basically that was the right to be able to use birth control. And so the Congress decided that let's codify this law and make it a federal right. Well, the Republicans, they decided that no, they weren't going to codify birth control. And so all of the Democrats voted for it, and only 8 Republicans, can you hear me? 8 voted to codify birth control. Then when we look at on the Democratic side, neutralization, and I want to start off with just talking about what it means to be neutral. And when you're talking about being neutral, that means not taking a stand one way or the other, not making a decision or making no difference, and that can lead to neutralization. When you think about the word neutralization, I want you to think about a fire, and how do you make the fire insignificant or ineffective? What you do is you pour water on it, and that neutralizes it. And so we are looking at women's voices being neutralized because, in an effort to be inclusive, the Democratic Party has started changing the terminology of pregnancy. So now we hear words like pregnant people, people with cervixes, people with uteruses, and in a way that is devaluing womanhood and motherhood. And I understand that they want to be inclusive of non-binary people and trans people, but at the end of the day, in order to be pregnant, you have to be a biological woman. Why is this important? It's important, the language is important because you will never hear men being called people with prostates. And this is also important because a lot of funding and research that addresses issues that are specific to women can be affected by this. Actually, now you're starting to see neutral language being placed into government documents and organizations that have traditionally supported women. For example, in government documents, if you look at COVID guidelines and you go in, it says pregnant people now. If you're looking at organizations, reproductive rights, for example, Planned Parenthood, the word woman is being used less and less, and they are actually using the term pregnant people. Now, we want to look at some of the gains that have been made by women over the last century. And this is very important, that we need to stay strong as women because of all these challenges that we have had and what we have had to battle in order to bring about equality. And we still don't have equality in this country, but we continue to fight for it. So first, in 1920, that was when the 19th Amendment was passed, and that gave women the right to vote. And when you have the right to vote, you have the right to bring your issues to the table. Voting is your voice. And when you are able to vote, you are able to determine who will make policy decisions for you and who will represent you. Also, in 1960, that is when the FDA approved the birth control pill. And that was a major advancement for women because that gave women the ability to plan their families as to how many children they wanted and when they wanted to have them. But even when that happened in 1960, in many states, birth control was still illegal. And so the case of Griswold versus Connecticut was in 1965, and that gave the right for married couples to use birth control, and it took an additional 7 years for single people to have the right in every state to use birth control. Then in 1974, President Gerald Ford signed into law the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And prior to this act, if a woman wanted to get credit or get a loan, she had to have a man co-sign for her. And so that allowed women more economic freedom. Then you have, in 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. And that prohibited your employer from discriminating against you if you were pregnant, and also made it possible for women, for pregnancy to be considered a temporary disability, and therefore your employer had to give you accommodations, had to allow for you to go to your doctor's appointments, and if you needed to have light duty for you to on your job, you could then also have light duty. In 1993, President Bill Clinton signed into law the Family Medical Leave Act, and that allowed up to 12 weeks of leave, unpaid leave, from your job. And that would allow for you, if you were pregnant and having a baby, if you were adopting a child, and also it not just for women but for men too, that they could take this leave, and also if you are for an illness or for to take care of a sick family member. So this really benefited families in general. Then in 2009, President Obama signed into law, this was one of the first pieces of legislation he signed into law, was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And Lilly Ledbetter, she worked for Goodyear Tires for 3 decades, and she was grossly underpaid in comparison to her male counterparts. And when she sued for it, the Supreme Court said that, she waited too late, because you have to sue within 180 days of your first paycheck being being unfairly paid, or to be able to prove discrimination. But if you don't know, and she didn't know to the end of her career, then how was she gonna sue? And so the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act actually made it possible for that window to be extended from when the time that you actually find out that you're being discriminated against. Then in 2010, President Obama signed into law the Affordable Care Act, and we all know that is Obamacare, and that was great progress for health care. But some of the main components of that were progress for women. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, women could be discriminated against in terms of getting insurance. They could be charged more, and even pregnancy could be considered a pre-existing condition, and women could be denied health insurance. And so now that is now illegal. Women cannot be denied health insurance because of pregnancy. And so I really want for people to look at this and really focus on the fact that it is so important for women to continue to have our own independent voice. We cannot be silenced. We cannot be neutralized. We cannot be shut down. We cannot let extremism of any party, either Democrat or Republican, dictate to us when, where, and how many children we want to have. Because at the end of the day, that controls our destiny. And that should be in nobody's hands but in the hands of women. And so I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today here at Power Dynamics for Life. I'm Dr. Aisha Haynes-Belizaire, and I would like for you, if you've been watching my channel for a while, please subscribe. It costs you nothing. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. It costs you nothing. And please share the video. If you know someone who can benefit from this, please share the video. Once again, I'm Dr. Aisha Haynes-Belizaire. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I will see you very, very soon. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.